This week, we welcome Santosh Nair, co-founder and CTO at Styx Intelligence, to discuss how to defend trust and reputation. In the leadership and communication section, mind the overconfidence gap. CISOs and staff don't see eye to eye on security posture. Your AI strategy needs more than a single leader. Avoid these communication breakdowns when launching strategic initiatives, and more. Business Security Weekly starts now.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
It's the show where we explore the business of security to improve the security of business. Your trusted source for actionable insights on leadership, communication, and innovation. Get ready for Business Security Weekly. Security Weekly and Cyber Risk TV are headed back to one of the biggest identity security events of the year, Octane 2025, put on by Okta. Live September 24th through the 26th, from the vibrant city of Las Vegas, Octane 2025 brings together the best minds in identity, security, and technology innovation. And this year, we're turning up the volume. Security Weekly will be on site in full force, with Mandy Logan and Adrian Sanabria leading the charge. Get ready for live stream executive interviews, exclusive on-site editorial coverage from SC Media, and brand new this year, a live stream episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. It's your chance to engage with identity leaders, dive into the future of AI security, and hang out with your favorite Security Weekly hosts. And here's the best part. Security Weekly listeners get an exclusive discount. Just head to securityweekly.com/octane, register, and use promo code O Oscar, K Kilo, T Tango, N November, S Sierra, C Charlie, M Mike, A Alpha 25 to get your conference pass for $200. Welcome to Business Security Weekly. This is episode number 408, recorded August 11th, 2025. I am your host, Matt Alderman, back from a week at Black Hat. What a crazy week. By the way, we'll talk about that in a second. But joining me for this interview segment are my co-hosts. First, Mr. Jason Albuquerque. I wore this shirt for you, buddy.
Beautiful. It's football season, baby. I'm so excited. Patriots pulled one out, man. I mean, talk about a blowout. And guess what? The Cleveland Browns actually showed up. I don't know. This is going to be a good preseason. We'll see.
Yeah, well, I saw Travion return a 100-yard kickoff return to the house
my Lord.
For you.
First touch. First touch in the NFL ever. Coast to coast. Gotta love it, man.
Yep, and Shedeur shined. I mean, come on.
Shedeur did well, man. I don't have any complaints. So, and you want to know what? In the post-game interviews, he wasn't cocky either, so that was impressive.
No. Actually, I read a lot of articles about how he just kind of the chips off the shoulder, exactly. Like he's just, yeah. Humbling experience to go 144th in the fifth round or whatever it was. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Exactly. Also joining me, my co-host that was with me last week at Black Hat, Mr. Ben Carr. Hey, Ben.
Yeah. Hey, Matt. Good to be here again today. Back from Black Hat. It was interesting out there. Seems like crowds were up for Black Hat, but read a couple articles recently. Crowds were down in Vegas generally. So it was good to see everybody out at Black Hat. We got to spend some time together. It's always the summer fun session to meet with everybody who you don't get to see during the year and not get to go to any of the sessions. So it's quite the week.
Yeah, it was quite the week. Santosh Nair is a seasoned entrepreneur and cybersecurity expert. He's the co-founder and chief technology officer at Styx Intelligence, a leading digital risk protection platform focused on helping enterprise clients stay protected from external cyber threats. Before Styx, Santosh was a partner at Deloitte, where he worked in the cyber risk advisory practice, helping clients with cyber monitoring and protection services. Throughout his journey, he's remained dedicated to driving innovation in cybersecurity and offering strategic guidance to companies and executives looking to strengthen their security posture. Santosh, welcome to Business Security Weekly.
Thanks for having me on, Matt. Looking forward to the discussion today.
So this discussion starts, I think, in a really interesting place. So executive protection has kind of been on the rise since the post-United Healthcare CEO attack, right? Like, it's been top of mind for a lot of people. And what I want to start with a little bit is, what's trending? Like executive protection used to be, I don't want to say this in a negative way, but it was kind of like you think about security guards, you think about, having your own private planes, but this and other things have kind of changed the way we have to approach executive protection, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, Matt. Since sort of the journey of the company about 5 years ago, when I used to talk to the customers or prospects about executive protection. Most were in the physical realm, right? So the physical security aspect of it. That's rapidly changing now. In fact, I would say a lot of the customers that we work with, one of the biggest use cases for them is around executive protection. And the reason for that we're starting to see that trend is a lot of impersonations. A lot of impersonation tied to executives, whether it's a LinkedIn profile, a WhatsApp, or other sort of social media platforms. What also a lot of companies are concerned about is that overall brand impact and the trust impact, right? In the last year or so, we are starting to see an increase in also job impersonation scams tied to executives. Couple of recent incidents talking to some enterprise customers about how their HR leaders were impersonated and people were being offered jobs with actually a signed offer letter. So those are all kind of real world things that we're seeing. And obviously, deepfake and is also sort of coming more to the forefront. We've seen a lot of examples of that, real world examples, how that's actually impacting leaders. So I think there's just generally more awareness within clients to think about how do they protect their executive team, how do they protect their leadership, how do they protect their board members. So that's definitely an area that we're seeing a lot of growth from our customers.
Santosh, quick question for you. Do you think that some of where we are, just as a social set of beings, because with social media and everybody wanting to be an influencer, so many CEOs wanting to get FaceTime out there in the media. I mean, think of it this way. There are executives like Colossal Biotechnology, who's bringing back the woolly mammoth. And they're out there trying to really become influencers in the industry. But at the same time, they're putting themselves at risk because some of these, modern technologies, they have political ramifications. And, in the world that we live in, there's so much, folks who are politically motivated these days. When you fall on one side of the aisle or the other and you're a social media influencer, you're bringing the risk onto yourself, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question, Jason, and we're seeing a lot of examples of that as well. Like just on my own journey, right? I'm a CTO. I'm more on the technical product side, but I do a lot of now interviews. I'm out in the media more often now, just because often your company is also tied to the brand as well, right? Mm-hmm. So we're starting to see that trend, that change happening. And now we're also thinking about, traditional cyber, we kind of thought about sort of this more from an enterprise risk perspective, right? Mm-hmm. But now we're starting to see, cyber teams need a lot more collaboration with the HR teams, with their communications group, with their legal group. So for example, one of the things that's important, right? What if I detect something, an executive impersonation? What is the next step towards that? I need to take steps to remediate that. So doing takedowns typically fell in the realm of legal, as an example. But that's shifting now. Cyber teams and IT in general have been asked to take more proactive role. And then to your point, Jason, we start thinking about disinformation, misinformation. We've seen a lot of examples, both in the political spectrum, but also enterprise customers, how stock market can have a big impact by a small sort of a post that comes out or something that can move the stock market in a big way, right? So it's not just, traditionally we thought, it's in the realm of more on the, on public sector, government, institutions at all, but we're starting to see that bleed into enterprise segment as well. And I think, over the next 3 or 4 years, I think we're going to be asked to have, people with skills and expertise within cyber teams, within IT teams, that can actually deal with misinformation and disinformation and being able to proactively act on those as well. That's just kind of my belief based on everything that I see now, both from a client perspective and what we're seeing in general. And a lot of the attacks are also getting very sophisticated. Obviously, with the use of AI, a lot of sophistication as well, right? So, Jason, to your point, both societal impact as well, but also from a risk lens, the risk lens is getting wider from that perspective as well.
Yeah.
Because when I always think about um, a brand, trust goes hand in hand with that brand, right? So if you don't, as your trust, if you can't, it's going to have an impact on your overall brand as well, right?
Yeah,
As
just
well.
like traditional
So
cyber. I mean, there's the reactive monitoring side of it, but then there's the proactive hygiene
exactly.
side of it, right? So as leaders, we have to have that proactive stance as well.
You nailed it. I mean, and that's really is the shift going from sort of being reactive to being proactive. And that's where a lot of the enterprise clients are starting to invest in is how do we change this lens from being very reactive to the problem to having, in some cases, it's an incident that's caused them to become more proactive. In some cases, they have that maturity. They have an executive team that's out there, um, you know, in the media. Uh, so it's just a kind of a double-edged sword, I guess. At the same time, they have to put the brand out, but also have take steps to minimize some of the risks that comes with it as well.
So, as you're talking, I think we're hearing that the lines are like blurring a little bit internally on what we're doing. But like, what about the external line? Like, where does that protection stop in executive protection, right? Like, we typically protect, work email accounts, computers, servers, applications, like, but it's all on the work side. But what happens now when we're thinking about like an executive and the protections necessary for their personal email account, right? Their personal branding, their personal, like, life outside of work. And then that extends, right? It's not just them, it's wife, kids, grandmothers, aunts, board members. Like, this is now like a bridge way beyond the enterprise. So how do we handle that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ben. And kind of just the sort of the genesis of or the origin story of the company itself was we're starting to see that line blurred between what is internal, what is external, right? So now companies have to think about sort of from a digital risk perspective. I also have to think about all of these external risks that I have, right? Just in the case of executive, just to give you an example, most often when we think about executives, we're not just thinking about their corporate email, but we're thinking about them as a brand itself. So that extends into their personal email account. So as part of the monitoring, we also take in the personal email accounts, right? Because one of the issue there is Ben is account takeovers, right? A social media account is taken over, and that could also cause a damage to the executive and the brand as well. So we take care in terms of thinking about that risk element, monitoring of their personal emails, monitoring of their social media, not just the corporate side of the social media, but also on the executive side of the social media profiles, right? Because they could be targeted for account takeovers and information that's spread through those account takeovers as well, right? So those lines are really blurring. Another element of this, when we think about the exposure, we're also thinking about what does that attack surface look like, right? So when I talk to customers, I'm talking about, well, when you think about your attack surface, you're thinking about your IP asset, but now you have to start thinking about your digital assets as well. So those are your social media assets. Executives is an asset. All of your VIPs are an asset. High privilege accounts are an asset. Anything that's exposed to the public internet becomes an asset. So how do you manage risk across all of those different kind of elements and then not just across surface web, but you have to start thinking about surface web, deep web, dark web across all of these entities, right? So for example, real world example, executives compromised credentials on the dark web could lead to an account takeover and could have multiple impacts across the board, right? So that's something that companies or organizations have started thinking about as well.
So
So
we
what are
started
the
this a little. Oh, go ahead, Ben. Sorry.
No, I was just going to follow up. So I'm really interested in this other side of the house, right? Because I think it's something that CISOs like we haven't had to deal with a lot. And one of the things that I see as a challenge, and I'm wondering if how you handle this and what you see as other interesting challenges that might exist in this space is, we think a laptop computer that's associated with your work account. I think people generally should clearly know behavior that they shouldn't do on that laptop or account, right? But as we think about personal accounts, personal iPads, personal mobile devices, there's a lot of other stuff that potentially goes on in that, especially now as you're bridging out into family members potentially, right? Or people not as connected to the company that may not want to involve those in this type of protection, yet it's still under purview. Like, it's a really interesting challenge to have to deal with. I'm wondering, can you talk about that? And then maybe, is there any other interesting challenges that CISOs who are listening to this, security leaders, may not necessarily think about as they're entering into this space?
Yeah, that's an important piece. I've been doing some sort of board level presentation talking about just the risk from an executive or leadership perspective, and how it could also have a spillover impact into their families, spouses, families, etc. Right? So when we're thinking about monitoring, it's something that we extend over to the family members as well, because and then some of the best practices we talk about is how do you also keep some of the other parts of the organization secure, right? So it's an extended part of the organization, whether it's your home network. As more and more of us are doing work remotely, we have to think about that, the risk that it could also, and then building out those awareness within the leadership teams itself, right? How do they protect the extended part of their families? So whether they're spouses or the children, because that could have another impact. Because one of the things that we find is the social engineering attacks on the rise. So these bad actors are mining data like phone numbers, personal contacts, relationship mapping. So this is something I think it's important, for CISOs to start thinking about, building more awareness, security awareness that they can extend into their leadership, but as a means also extend into the families of the leadership teams as well, right? So you can, I think, gone are the days when we think about security just from a holistic perspective. We got to think about that from extending in a lot of some of these different areas as well, right? Whether you're thinking about executive risk, whether you're thinking about broader attack surface risk and other digital assets that you own. So that lens is growing in definitely, and then we're starting to see more and more attack vectors, right, that are using social media, that is using, like some of the examples I was talking about, job impersonation scam, that's also on the rise, right?
So I picked up three really interesting trends that are tangled together, right? One is the executive tied to the business and the impact through that from a trust perspective. Elon Musk to Tesla and the impact to Tesla is a very real example. We all watched it play out, right, in the national media. We've got another one of this whole thing around physical to digital, but almost back to physical when you think about family and home and all this other stuff, right? Which is a really other interesting trend is, yes, it started with physical, it's picked up the digital pieces, but that also starts to extend back into the family life and just creates this really interesting challenge. And then you have home versus work versus on the road. Like these entanglements create, I think, some interesting challenges for a CISO to have to deal with, because it is an expanding threat landscape for sure, but it's entangling parts of your personal life, your home life, when you're on the road. So Santosh, where I want to go next is, where should organizations start? Because there's a tie between the org and the executive, but then there's a tie to the executive and the family. What do you prioritize first? How do you start to address these different threats?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it starts with building that awareness within the leadership team as well, because often at times, one of the reasons why I think we're seeing more and more targeted attacks stemming from the executives is because of the nature, right? They're always busy. People take action when IT gets a call from an executive, right? Less guardrails, more access to more information, corporate information. So then, really, the conversation should start with that awareness itself, right? Having those executive awareness presentation, just talking about the general risk, right? When you post something on any social media platform, think about even though your profile might be private and you're sharing that information only with your close contact, but always do that thinking that it's always going to fall into the public realm, right? Having that sort of awareness, like some of the best basic hygiene. One of the common things that you'll see from surveys done across the leadership team, reuse of password. Again, some of these hygiene things that could be brought to the forefront from that education, those awareness campaign. And then one of the things, I used to do a lot of these sessions, education sessions with companies. I always felt like you can bring people along on the journey when you can actually extend that awareness to their family members as well, right? And so that becomes almost a kind of a part of your DNA as you start thinking. And I think we should go as far as being able to do that with putting controls in place where you have some standard ways on how executives set up their home networks, right? So if you have a guest network, can they have a best practice where the guest networks are isolated, right? On the road, certain controls, right? Zero trust based sort of access, right? So there's a lot of things that can be done, but I think it generally starts with that sort of the awareness. And to your point, Matt, the physical element doesn't go away, right? So for example, executive is traveling, you still want to be able to provide that protection level, right? So for example, there's some civil unrest that's going on into the location they're traveling to. How do you make sure that the executives are aware of that and in a timely manner and provide that level of control, right? So the physical, cyber, sort of those elements also need to come together when you're thinking about the executive protection lens. So the social media side, the physical side, and then obviously the overall sort of general cyber controls, whether it's endpoint or other controls that are in place as well.
I was curious on one piece here. I'll let you go in a second, Jason. You were talking about awareness. How big of a role does the executive admin play from an executive protection perspective, right? Because if I think about it, the EA has access to the executive's email, different accounts, maybe social. This awareness can't just stop at the executive, right? I mean, the EA has a potentially huge role here as well, right?
Yeah, definitely in the best practices perspective, EA should definitely be part of that overall kind of, layers of protection, right? Because as you rightly said, they have a lot of access to a lot of information, the calendars, etc. So again, prime for social engineering attacks, right? Again, absolutely.
I mean, at the end of it, guys, I think what we're hearing is there is no more line, though. There's no more line. We live in a time where, you talk a lot about it, Santosh, about a digital risk score. An executive at that level, their digital risk score is going to fall across their corporate risk, their personal risk, their work from home risk. It's literally their entire lives that create that digital risk score. It's everything they do. You can't even go to a concert these days and be a bad person without being seen, right? Think about what's been happening on the news with certain executives. You get caught no matter what at this point. So digital risk score for an executive at that level is 24/7 every single day, everything they do. And I don't think the EA is the only risk in the organization. How many CFOs have access to executive information?
Oh, yeah.
How many HR professionals have access to? It's the entire organization who interacts with those high-level executives that need to be educated. It's everyone.
Yeah, the challenge here is the
Yeah.
bridge between the personal and the corporate, right?
I don't know if
that's
there is
always the challenge. Like,
it's literally wide open.
Yeah.
But-
There's no
but
line.
that vector, like that's the challenge that I see of. I don't want you controlling my personal browser and what I can and can't see, right? Like that's a very easy one to think about.
Yeah.
But where do you go? What do you post, right? Like it's that vector is just an open doorway into the corporation right now, and I don't see how you close it effectively because people want to do what they want to do,
Yeah.
and the execs are the worst offenders sometimes.
Oh, of course. Absolutely.
Yeah. And Ben, I would almost challenge that thought process, right? Because I think, at least in my conversation, I think executives are almost aware of those risk areas now, right? And they are on board, as far as I see, to helping to having, the IT organization cyber play a more active role in the protection side of it, right? So again, because the lines are blurring now, I think they're also seeing, day after day, news articles, media, of a lot of this happening. So I think they're more on board, if you will, onto the monitoring piece. Like 4 or 5 years ago, when we started talking about this, we had to literally educate what executive protection is. But now it's something that our clients are asking: do you provide this? How do you do this? Right? What does a digital risk score means? Right? So they are asking those questions. So I'm starting to see that shift happening. And then I think we fast forward and we're now starting to think about how is misinformation, disinformation going to impact enterprise clients, right? Now it's more at the political level, more at the individual level. But what role is that going to play, right? Are we going to have a discipline within cyber that's actually is responsible for managing that element? Who's going to be responsible for takedowns, right?
That was going to be my next
How are you
question,
gonna
honestly.
manage
Is the
that?
CISO the right role for that? Because there's a PR aspect to it. There's a marketing aspect to
Exactly.
it. There's a financial aspect to it. There's so many different pieces. And, I look at the 2025 mind map of the responsibilities of a CISO, and I'm already saying, holy crap, that's a lot. Now we're going to add this type of protection, executive protection to the table now too. I'm throwing it out there, spaghetti at the wall. Is the CISO the right role for that?
Yeah, I think it's we've been talking about this whole concept of fusion centers, right? Where fraud, cyber coming together. But I'm seeing, like, in the future, that a lot of that fusion will have to happen. Like, very often now, when we're going through this customer journey, we're actually having conversation with HR. We're having conversation with legal now. As a cyber company, those were unthinkable many years ago, but now we're starting to have those conversations. The reason for that is because of this different factors, right? Where does the line blur between marketing and comm on the social side to cyber? Where does the cyber responsibility fall? Like, when you think about takedown services, we also have to think about not just the visibility aspect of it. What is the disruption? What is the adversary disruption? How do you think about remediation? Where does that responsibility lie? Does that lie in cyber, IT, broader IT? Or does that go back to HR and legal to deal with, right? Financial sector, they have a huge volume of takedowns, primarily targeted through various, online banking frauds, right? Now, their legal team can cope up with it, so the responsibility falls within cyber teams to manage it, right? To do those takedown. And imagine this problem once you add misinformation and disinformation to that. Where does the responsibility lie? I mean, it's a question for all of us to start thinking about those real near world possibilities, I think, right?
Yep. Yeah, I actually have 2 articles that are going to cover parts of this in the next segment. Because you're right. Is it one leader? Is it multiple leaders? What is it, right? Because there are all these kind of gray lines that have to be addressed. And maybe isn't 100% in the CISO's purview. The CISO is just one of many leaders that is responsible for this. Time will tell. Santosh, thank you so much for joining us on Business Security Weekly.
Thanks for having me on. Great conversation.
Yes, thank you. Ransomware, supply chain attacks, 0 days. Cyber threats don't wait, and neither should your business. With ThreatLocker, you're not just reacting to threats, you're stopping them before they start. Our Zero Trust endpoint protection locks down your environment with pinpoint control over what's allowed to run and what's not. No guesswork, no blind spots. Just proactive, built-for-now security that keeps your business moving. Want to see how a true default deny strategy works? Head over to securityweekly.com/threatlocker and take the first step towards shutting the door on threats before they even knock. All right, gentlemen, let's get into this week's articles. But before I cover my preset articles, I have breaking news. Ready? End of an era. AOL to discontinue its dial-up internet service after 30 years. I didn't even know they were still doing dial-up.
It still exists? Hold on a second.
I still pop in like 5 1/4 inch floppy and boot up, the PC every now and then just to dial in.
All right.
I ran across that in the news this morning. I'm like, are you serious? I didn't know dial-up was still a thing. It is. They still have the service there. It's being retired in September. So if you're still using dial-up service, folks, you're going to have to get into the 21st century at least. Anyways.
I'm sure they're having trouble sourcing modems when the modems go down.
How the heck? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly right. Anyways. So funny. Okay. First official article is this article in CISO on the overconfidence gap. CISOs and staff don't see eye to eye on security posture. Is anyone surprised?
No, I'm not surprised. I mean, we have
no,
this.
but I have a different reason.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at the end of it, I think there's a connection and a communication gap between executives and practitioners. At the end of the day, right? I mean, that's the big story right there. And if you're a leader who's connected to your organization, you're going to be listening, you're going to take in information, and to be honest with you, you'll be able to communicate the why if you're not going towards strategies that the practitioners want or are advocating for, and at least the practitioners will understand the why. It may be a business decision, it may be a business risk decision. So it's connection and communication, I think, is the biggest gap as to why you're seeing these issues between confidence levels.
Yeah, I think we're leaning into the same thing, Jason. The word I brought to this table was perspective.
Yeah, exactly.
CISO has a different perspective than the analyst, right? And the analyst going like, man, if we just did this, we'd be more secure. And, the CISO going, yeah, we wouldn't, because no one would ever do that because the user impact you're creating. Like, there's this, there's this discussion or the tolerance for spend or, I think if analysts and CISOs actually sat down and had a real conversation about it, if they could,
right,
the conversation might tend towards, I get everything you're saying, but like you're not understanding the why. Let me lay it out for you, and I think then there would be a closer alignment, though, although maybe still a little bit of disconnect.
Yeah, and sometimes it's a matter of sitting down and saying, listen, I get it. In nirvana state, yes, this would be absolutely what we would invest in, but we have some financial issues. We have this, we have that. We have some, funding appropriation issues. We have, competing priorities that we have to focus on, and explaining the why. When you explain the why, it allows them to understand and get a little bit more context to know, perfect scenario, we would do it, but we're not in a perfect scenario right now. We have to make different decisions.
So communication and connection. There's probably scars that the CISO has on his back, right? That he brings to the table.
Maybe.
So,
I mean, it's transparency of communication, right? Exactly. There's certain things you can be transparent about. There's certain other things you can't always be as transparent about. But if you have a really good trust level with your staff and you're having regular communication and discussion about this stuff, then the analyst is like, well, I want to go play with the new latest XYZ toy. Well, unfortunately that toy's not in the budget, right? Like, exactly. and it could be a little bit of that, right? Because we hear about all this new technology and all these new capabilities. Look, if I were an analyst, I'd want to get my hands on all of it. But CISOs know they can't manage all this stuff. They don't even have the budgets for all this stuff. So
when you're connected and transparent, you build trust. Even though they may not like the decision that's happening, they still trust, right? The trust is still there. That's the key to all this.
How many times have you looked at a new technology and been really excited about it? You get 6 months down the road and you're like, man, this just didn't work. Like
Right.
it's a little bit of kind of that understanding about the reality of what the actual gain will be by some of these new things that are flash in the pans at best, right?
Yeah.
Intrusion protection systems.
Right.
Enough
It's a
said.
throwback, yeah.
Enough said. Drop the mic, Matt. Drop the mic.
All right. Article number 2, your AI strategy needs more than a single leader. This was the article I was referring to in the interview segment, right? Who should own AI, right? And so this article gets in, I go out and hire a chief AI officer. And oh my gosh.
That killed me. Just seeing that killed me. You know, I look at it this way. AI is a tool. It's a tool that needs to be embedded throughout the organization and all of the departments within the organization. Did we hire a chief internet officer when the internet was born? No, we didn't. Right? So it's
database
you gotta be
officer?
thinking about that way. Say again,
Right,
Ben?
like chief database officer. Like
Yeah.
every application or form of tech does not need a chief,
No,
right? Like
it's a tool.
Yeah, it is a shared responsibility for sure, right? Obviously, you've got the CIO in play, you have the CTO if you have one in play, you have the CISO in play. Like there's multiple teams here that have to be involved, right? This does not fall under one leader.
Sometimes you bring on like a leader like that, and depending upon it, all really depends upon the scale of the organization to some extent. But I think for the most part, you bring on a chief AI officer. It almost does a disservice because it focuses things and takes away the interaction because people are afraid to step on people's toes, misalignment, create friction. And so the security guys are going, all right, well, the AI guy's handling it. The tech guy is going, all right, well, the AI guy's handling it. And so balls get dropped.
It's bureaucracy at its finest when you do that.
Yeah.
No thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next one is 4 areas CISOs must assess before being AI ready. Lots of conversations on this last week, obviously at Black Hat. I mean, like almost every interview topic, some touch of AI in it.
Right. I mean, I read this article and by the time I was done with it, I actually had to do a control F and do a find to see how many times they mentioned data. And data was mentioned 3 times in the article, none of which had to do with securing it at all. And I just put in big capital letters, secure your data landscape. That wasn't spoken about at all. That should be the foundation of all of this. Before you assess risk versus reward or the talent conundrum or the compliant AI adoption or responsible safe AI, secure your data landscape. Number 1.
Understand the problem and understand the landscape. Like, figure out what you're trying to do first before you march off on a direction where you know where you're going.
Wait, did you just say asset inventory?
Yeah, absolutely. And classification and protection.
A topic we haven't talked about in over 6 years on this podcast. No, folks.
Yeah, no, right. Yeah, sure. But yeah, no, I mean, this article for me was ultimate failure in knowing what the priority should be before you start instituting AI into your organization.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think about the use cases you're solving for, the data you need access to, all before you go down all this other stuff.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Lovely. Oh, here's my second article, the CISO CMO Alliance, Why Cybersecurity Messaging Needs a Unified Front. So this was again, we were talking about ownership of different things like the chief AI officer, but here's a really interesting take, right? Because cybersecurity is a brand issue now. And this was the discussion we just were talking about with Santosh on the previous one, right? And the need to do this. And okay, CISO CMO, I get it from a messaging. It's a little broader than this, I think. As we were talking through this on the last segment, legal potentially is involved because of brand and takedown. Other groups are going to get involved. So I want to extend this concept beyond just the CISO and the CMO.
That was my note. This is the approach that you should be taking with every executive, every peer within your organization. HR, you should be doing with marketing. You should be doing it with legal, your service lines. Like, yes, you need to be heavily integrated with all of the other executives within your organization. I get it. Yes, CMO is important, but they're all important. Having that integration and having that connection, having that relationship with all of the other executives is extremely important. There's use cases for every other one, just like these.
It's going to depend on the org, but there's a pre and the post to this, right? So the post is if you have a breach, you better have had some serious conversations with your CMO to know how you're going to market, how you're going to message, how you're going to brand. Like all that has to be really aligned, right? So I think if you haven't thought about that, think about that. There's the pre of like, especially if you're, look, we're all vendor companies, right? But I think some companies, it's necessarily harder. Like an AT&T, yes, you can certainly market yourself as, a secure company, but I think we're still challenged in a way to get consumers on board that it's something they should necessarily be concerned about. They're more concerned about the bells and whistles. But I do think on enterprise companies, like if I'm looking at something, if I'm acquiring some type of technology, it's certainly coming up under third-party risk. But I'm really interested, especially if you're a security company, what the heck are you doing for a security strategy? Do you have a CISO? What's the alignment? What does it look like? What are you trying to accomplish? What's the program goals? Like, I want to know that stuff because it tells me if you're thinking about the right stuff and do I trust you? And so, I pivoted the title recently to security and trust officer in a couple of roles. And I think that's important. I think that's where you partner with the CMO is how do you build trust and belief that your company is the right one to do business with? And I think that's a pivot that's going to enhance sales and, you'll see gains from it.
But again, to that point, because the ecosystem of your colleagues is important, you don't ever want to be collaborating with a CMO and put something out publicly that could put you in legal risk.
Yeah.
So you have to have it be a collaborative. It has to be.
Has to.
Yeah, I like your concept of trust because I've seen more of this with the rise of third-party risk management again. On this concept of the trust center, right? Clients want to be able to show what they've done more proactively to build trust with their clients because I'll tell you right now that one of the biggest challenges in the industry as a whole is retention, right? And so how do you stop clients from churning? Well, you partially do that by giving them better features, but you also show them that you're a secure, trustworthy environment as well. And that goes a long way towards the brand, even without the CMO, by the way. But
yeah, correct.
All right. Avoid these communication breakdowns when launching strategic initiatives. As you guys know, I've done a number of keynotes and presentations in my career, as you guys have as well. And what I found interesting is this concept of communication leak points in messaging, right?
I love this article.
I was sitting there thinking about it. I'm like, oh, you're right. Like what's in my head when I go to put it on paper, what am I missing? And then when I take that and put it into what I'm saying, how much is lost? And then obviously what others understand, like what you say versus what they hear can be a huge issue.
100%. I mean, it's the erosion of the message as you start working toward the end product, right? Yeah. From your brain to the paper, there's a little bit of an erosion of the messaging. From your paper to the presentation, there's a little bit of an erosion. From the presentation to the person who's receiving its mind could be eroded, right? Now, I love the article for two different reasons. Number one, the realization of where these leak points exist, right? So that way, as someone who's speaking or writing or delivering the message, you can think about those places. The other one was the level of effort it would take to get you to perfection, because the suggestions that they have here on how to remediate that erosion of the message, it's a lot. It's a lot. Like you got to bring in stakeholders and, do an ideation session with them. Then you want to go back and you want to deliver the there's a lot there. And I just don't know if we have that level of effort to get that done. Right. But in a nirvana state, like we talked about earlier, right, Ben, this would be a great method to refine it, but it's a lot. There's a lot of work there to get it done.
There'd be a lot of investment and time in this, right? Like it's hard to put this much time into it, especially given all the other demands that you're facing, right? And so there's a wizardry to this of making sure that what you start with from an idea and get to delivery in a communications format. It's not just you wing it. You've got to work on this over time. Matt, you've done a great job of this over your career, I think, right? You've really got to focus on kind of working at this as a process that you're constantly learning and tweaking. And one of the biggest things I think is like having somebody who you trust to run stuff by to see where the gaps are, because you almost come with this bias or blindness to like what you've brought to the table and you get it. And I think if you walk out as any type of leader, but especially a CISO, if you walk out of a meeting and your response is, man, I just don't know why they didn't get that. Well, it's probably because you didn't communicate it effectively.
Right.
That should be
100%.
your first gut reaction, and use it as a learning experience to kind of interview the people you presented to and figure out why, right?
Yeah.
Have that person in the board that you're bouncing the ideas off of, because the questions they ask aren't because they don't like what you're saying. It's because they're identifying a gap point that you didn't know about.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, there's got to be a happy medium between doing nothing and what it states here. I mean, think about it this way. If every presentation you had to create an immersive decision environment where stakeholders can interact with multiple dimensions of the complex ideas, and then you have to identify 3 essential components that your message can survive, and then recruit 5 individuals that are unfamiliar with you to be able to review it. Then you map a distribution and interpretation across each. I mean, that's a lot for a presentation.
It is. I did it in a well, hold on. I did it in a slightly smaller way when I was doing these, especially when you're up on a big stage getting a big message across, right? I would ideate with, in my case, the marketing team, and I would have different folks from the marketing team, and I would take what was in my head and I'd kind of like lay out this vision on the whiteboard, right? And share it with them. And then they would go off and they would build something, right? Okay. And then we would go back and forth through the iteration. So when I was doing RSA conference keynotes or Black Hat sessions, like a lot of work, like months in advance, right? You're prepping all this stuff and you're thinking about how to, so you do kind of do that, Jason, in some respects, right? And maybe it's not 5 and maybe it's not 3 points here and 3 points there, but you're going through some level of iteration of what's in the head to what's on paper and how does that articulate. Then once I had my slides nailed down, it was all about the talk track. And I've said this on the show multiple times. I mean, I would go into day before conference and I would spend the whole day rehearsing. I'd record myself. I'd listen to it. I'd critique myself. I'd change it, tweak it, right? Until the point was I delivered it.
Yeah.
And then I was done. But the thing I never did per se, which is this last piece, is getting the feedback from the recipients, right? Which is, did they get what my main message was, right?
Right.
Did they get it or not? And are there unanswered questions? When you're presenting kind of globally like that, you don't always have the ability to get the feedback loop, which is an interesting part in this article that if you can get it, is regardless of whether it humiliates you or not, it's probably really good feedback.
But see, I get that from when you're speaking at a Black Hat or a global conference or an RSA. Just for context, this is about a boardroom presentation.
Yeah.
Like, open up the article, read the article, and the first thing is boardrooms worldwide, right? Executives are investing significant resources to create polished presentations. If every time I had to get in front of a board or constituents or something like that, and I had to go through this lengthy process like you would do to go present at Black Hat to the globe, that's why I'm saying there's got to be a balanced approach.
There's still pieces of that you can do, right? Like,
Sure.
you maybe don't do
Absolutely.
the whole thing, right? I'm sure the CEO of GM might do that when he's doing the board level presentation or the earnings report, right? Or the CFO may do some of that. But in general, like if you or I are presenting the board, I mean, like just getting out of the board and having that trusted advisor go back to you and be like, what did you not get out of what I was saying? What was the miss, right? Like what was the conversation between the other board members about like what didn't connect? Like those points are invaluable, not to be like, oh,
Absolutely.
I didn't realize that. It's like, oh, I didn't realize that. How do I improve that connection point for next time? Because that didn't sync. Like the messaging was off.
Right.
Yep. Agreed. All right. I had to pull in this last article. It's all around brand and reputation, people. If you've gotten a theme out of this one. So Chris Martin's ex,
Figured a way
Gwyneth
to work it
Paltrow, stars as new spokesperson for astronomer in wake of Coldplay Kiss Cam video.
PR genius right there. Let me tell you, man. PR genius all day long. I saw that commercial. I sat back and wondered, wait a minute, is this even real? Holy shit, this is funny.
It was.
They
It
did
was.
such a
And
good
it was
job.
done well too. It was done well. Like they
Absolutely.
tackled the problem, but completely avoided it.
Head
It
on.
was marketing
Head
genius.
on.
Yeah.
Yep. Folks, this is why you need to have good relationships with your PR and marketing folks, because sometimes they save your butt.
Uh-huh. Absolutely.
At least
PR
from a
genius.
company.
Look,
At least from
I
a
could
company
honestly see
perspective.
how you could do something like this over a public breach, right? Like if there was a breach and you found the right spokesperson and the right messaging
Yeah.
and it was consumer related, I could see how this could
Absolutely.
turn opinion. Not saying you don't have to do all the other stuff, but this is genius.
It was
Absolutely.
genius. Yeah, I thought it was awesome. Gentlemen, always a pleasure. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening. We'll see you next week on Business Security Weekly.